Hi, everyone. Chuck here again this morning, and going to move on to section B in module 2, which is about, building those transformation plans. And so, in the first section, we figured out already what's driving us towards needing to change. And now we're moving into the area of addressing our current state here. So there's three parts to it as we end up looking at it here. I'm going to capture all three of those areas at the same time here as we work through it. So the three parts of assessing the current state is: first, perform gap assessments; second, conduct maturity assessments; and third, identify the misalignments, common misalignments. So let's walk through those three here. So when we look at the first one, perform gap assessments, here's what the dictionary says. So if you jump out, pull up your cell phone, look up in the dictionary, it defines a gap and a gap analysis as follows. The gap, the difference between the actual performance level and the expected performance level. Gap analysis is the tool that is to assess the differences between what's offered and customers' expectations. Now, they bring up an interesting point here, the difference between a gap and what is a defect. And a defect is a value that doesn't meet what we've promised and good enough for a metric. So, any difference between a target and actual is a gap, but we've got to figure out what the significant ones are or the actual defect. And we can't do that until, of course, we do the assessments. We've known what the drivers are, the end result. So we're not meeting that minimum threshold that we promised the customer, whether it's just what's acceptable or superior or minimal, whatever, we failed to meet that threshold. And that's where the defect is. Second part on conducting maturity assessments, we've talked about the 5 stages before, from stage 1, which is dysfunctional, to stage 5, which is fully orchestrated. No, by the way, I do the same thing here from a test prep. When I get into something like this, and it's like, ooh, I know those stages of maturity can be important, I take a moment and try to remember what those 5 stages are. So if you remember, stage 1's dysfunctional. Stage 2 is reactive, okay, and semi-functional. Third stage, which is integrated. Integrated is not only functional, but we're effective about it. Stage 4 is always one I mess up with, but in stage 4, we're now starting to extend ourselves and integrate ourselves with our suppliers and partners on either side. And then stage 5 is fully orchestrated. So even going through these 5 here, you can see me pause on, ooh, what were those things? This is the moments we should sneak back and layer in some additional learning to build in our confidence. So, we need to see where we are to begin with in this process. The last one, common misalignments as we look at it here, the idea behind it as we look at it, they're misalignments. That's what gaps are, and they're possibly defects as well, if the misalignment is big enough. So, as an example, we can look at things like perfect order fulfillment, the cycle time to fulfill the order, agility, costs, cash to cash cycles. Those are major potential areas to look at. And as well, I would say they're very straightforward and clear as ways to measure it. So the idea in this first step again, or this next step, is to assess where we are, to do those gaps assessments, where we at in maturity, and what are the misalignments where we've identified we need to get here. And those, if they're significant, probably become the major, some of the major priorities that we would pursue as part of our transformation process.